You're listening to Saturday Morning Media. And now, back to our show. Under the Puppet is made possible by the Saturday Morning Media Patreon patrons who support the show over at patreon.com/Saturday Morning Media. Welcome to Under the Puppet, the show that talks to professional puppeteers about the art and business of puppetry with the sole purpose of helping you up your puppet game. My name is Grandpa Choco, and this is Under the Puppet. Greetings, puppeteers and puppet fans from around the world. I'm so excited to bring you this episode because in it, I interview Muppeteer Julianne Buescher. Now, in addition to doing a ton of voiceover work for video games and television, Julianne is an amazing puppeteer who's worked on shows like Dinosaurs, Sid the Science Kid, Sesame Street, and most recently, she portrayed Yolanda the Rat and Denise, Kermit's other girlfriend, on the Muppets. I had a great talk with Julianne, and I can't wait for you to hear it. There's a lot of really good stuff in it. And be sure to stick around after the interview for the next step in your puppeteer action plan. But for now, here's my interview with puppeteer and Muppeteer Julianne Buescher. Julianne Buescher is a puppeteer who's worked with the Muppets and on films such as Forgetting Sarah Marshall, among many other projects. She also does voices for Disney and for video games, including Skyrim and Elder Scrolls. Julianne, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Hi.
I'm very excited to talk to you today. And
me too. This is great.
Oh, excellent. You brought everybody with you. Perfect. What is the first puppet you remember seeing?
I'm pretty sure it was all the Sesame Street puppets, because that show had just launched, I think, when it was just time for me to learn how to read. And I did. I learned how to read from that show before I even went to school. So the puppets I just fell in love with them. But more about that street was everything that Jim was doing that was so creative and unusual. Like he would make himself a stop motion puppet and do those things where it looks like he's gliding along the grass. He's not moving his legs. There was nothing. At that time, there was nothing like that.
Right.
You know, he and Ernie Kovacs were like the big innovators.
Yeah.
I mean, Ernie was like way before, but a big influence on him.
Right.
And I was just stunned with everything they were doing.
And do you think you realized that they were like that somebody was controlling them? Do you think you realized that pretty early, or was it like were these like their own like kind of little creatures?
The only thing I remember realizing is that I paid more attention to them. I couldn't care less about the humans on the street. Right. I wanted to see the puppets.
Yeah.
They were just so amazing. There was something about them.
Yeah. When did you decide that puppetry was a job you wanted to get into?
That did not happen until I moved out here after college. I didn't even think of puppetry. I mean, it was always a part of my life because of Sesame Street. I had you know, the Count puppet and all of that. Mm-hmm. And my mom would call up my cousins and pretend she was Cookie Monster, and they totally bought it over the phone. You know, stuff was going on, but I never thought about puppeteering until I moved out here, and that was the first major kind of job that I saw in the paper was Brian looking for Dinosaurs performers.
Oh, okay.
So I was like, oh, I need a job. But that's a whole other gigantic story. Before I saw that ad in the paper, I ran into some Henson people at a cafe, and I was like, "Thank you, you guys. You changed my life. You know, everything you do." They're like, "Come on up and meet Jim. He's an awesome guy." I'm like, "What did you just say to me?" And so I had the business card, put it on my nightstand, and just wouldn't call out of fear. And just a few weeks later, Jim passed away. It's like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever done, is not jump on that. Mm-hmm. So when I saw the ad that Brian put in the paper for Dinosaurs, I was like, I'm not saying no to anything. And I went in, and I was horrible. But just because I'd never picked up a puppet before. But right. Brian was like, no, there's something going on. Come with us. So. And
was that your first puppet job? Like your first paid puppet job?
That the Dinosaurs auditions, I wasn't chosen for that for the first season, but through all the people that I met through that, I was brought on to Riders in the Sky.
Okay.
Which was created and produced by the same people who did Pee-wee's Playhouse, mm-hmm. and it was the awesome Western musical group Riders in the Sky, and it was their adventures and their daily trials. And it was delightful and amazing. And unfortunately, only had one season, but I was surrounded by the best of the best and learned that way. I didn't have training before that. Learned on the job with these incredible people.
Out of your career, what is the best piece of puppetry advice that you ever received that you still use today?
The best piece of puppetry advice is that this puppet does not end at your elbow. It's not this thing that you put on and you're just shaking it around. Your legs are the puppet's legs. Your body is the puppet body. Your facial expressions and the way you're carrying yourself informs the puppet. And whatever you're feeling is going to come out of that puppet. So be aware and use your entire being.
And that's something you still use today?
Yes. Yeah, I can't separate it. I can't possibly.
Yeah. It's ingrained now that you've done it so much.
Yeah. It's like knowing your guitar or your saxophone. Now you can't separate them. It's impossible to, and you're, even when you're sleeping, your fingers are making the movements,
Right.
But
you wake up talking to your hand.
Totally. Always.
Who is a puppeteer that you think every puppeteer should study or needs to know?
I was trying to... Okay, there are so many forms of puppetry. I know that every single form has their master and their creative geniuses that have informed that particular craft. For what I do, of course, it's Jim Henson. Mm-hmm. But not only because of the puppet aspect, but like I was saying with the Sesame Street, his immense, broad range of creativity. He informs almost every aspect of my life and what he's done. And I think what I should be doing also, though, is studying all these other great masters of all the other forms of puppetry. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what everybody should really be doing.
Have you worked in have you done shadow puppets before? Or have you worked with marionettes before?
I have. I find marionetting very difficult, and I've never been able to. I've never had the call to do that, but I really want to explore bunraku. Mm-hmm. And I really want to venture off, stop motion animation. I've always wanted to have a hand in that and try that out. And what I really, really want to do is develop some kind of puppet and really work on extremely subtle, realistic movement and see how deep that can go. That's my next interest.
Excellent. What is the biggest lesson you've learned about this business?
The biggest lesson I've learned about this business, that the business can really get in the way of what you want to do if you let it. Every step of the way, you really have to be absolutely true to your heart and your passion and what you are born to do, what you're here to do. And that can change. Mm-hmm. If it's puppetry for 10 years and then it's cooking for 10 years and then it's travel writing, you really have to follow your heart. There's no obligation to stay in the business once you get in, quote, the business. It's knowing yourself fully. The business is this separate monster that has nothing to do with who you are and why you're here.
All right, now you don't have to name specific projects, but what was the worst audition you ever had?
I was thinking about this. I have been on auditions where I thought I did the worst possible, horrible, embarrassing thing on the planet, and I get cast. Mm-hmm. And then other times I go home and I'm like, that was easy breezy. No call. So, again, it's separating the beast from what you're doing, because you have no idea why they called or why they didn't. But I do think that puppeteering auditions are incredibly challenging because of the lack of knowledge and information of what we really need in order to do our work. Generally, 90% of puppet auditions are challenging because the equipment is not there that we need to do our job. No one's been told that, hey, these folks are going to need a camera that can go high and a monitor and a chair that rolls, and you need a setup to put the scripts up and our toolbox. Yeah. It's like asking an astronaut could you please launch to the moon while sitting in this tractor, please?
You got your scuba mask. That's good, right?
Why can't you do it? I don't understand.
Yeah. I was just the other day, I had a big discussion because I had a headband to put my mic in. And the sound guy was like, what is, like, no, that's not how it's done. We clip it to your shirt. And I'm like, no, but this is why, so I totally understand what you're saying. Yeah.
Every time it's like ground zero, retraining everybody.
Yeah. I did an audition once where they were moving the camera, like as
trying to follow you.
Yeah. And like I was naive enough, and it was kind of the first big puppetry audition I had. And I was like, I can't say anything. I can't tell them to. But it's like after I got out, I talked to Brian Clark, who I think you at least know of Brian Clark.
Yeah.
And he had gone in after me, and he was, I just told her to stop moving it. And I was like, why didn't I do that? So I think that's something too. Is like you have to learn to go in and say, no, this is how it's done for puppeteers. If you want the best from us, you're going to need to do this stuff.
Yeah. Which is difficult because most puppeteers are endearingly soft-spoken, and that's a quality, that helps us have great characters, but also hinders us. And we usually don't speak up for ourselves like we should, especially, which is ironic because we're the ones that need the most equipment,
right?
And the most, that's that camera thing. I don't know if everybody realizes the camera has to stay still because we're watching ourselves in the frame. And that's how our movements, subtle movements up and down, because we can't move the puppet's face, that's one of the ways we get emotionality and communicate that way. But camera people are used to following live actors who don't know where they are in the frame. And so it's a little trick of talking to the camera person every time, going, okay, here's why it's different, and here's why you need to stay still. Yeah.
And a move is fine if it's planned out beforehand. If
yes.
you know, like, okay, the camera's going to move when I cross over to here, so
that you can follow them in the monitor. Yeah,
right. I know that in my head, but
yeah.
I guess we got to be like, it's going back to like, what would Jim do? Jim would say, "Hey, stop moving that camera." He may not say it in those words, but he would say, "Stop moving the camera." I would assume he would.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's another tricky thing for puppeteers. We need to learn more aspects of, I think, of the industry, like the camera operations and the building of the puppets and things like that, so that we have more inherent knowledge to solve problems quickly than maybe other departments kind of stay in their own department,
Right. Well, Taylor, kind of bouncing off of that, what's one skill outside of manipulation do you think every puppeteer should have?
Well, first, manipulation. It makes me nervous when people separate manipulation as a separate skill. For me, I think puppeteers have to be incredible actors first and know everything about acting. But that includes movement, dance, vocal work, improv, everything that affects how you communicate with your own body and knowing your own body fully. If there's a disconnect with what you're doing with a puppet and your own physicality and your own being, that's what kind of creates that little jarring thing where it's just a disconnect, and the audience can feel it, and it's hard as a puppeteer if that little creature on your arm is not fully you. So knowing the way you move, knowing the way animals move, knowing the way other people move and talk and behave, and if you saw a puppeteer and you looked down and their body is not conforming to the character, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If they're not moving and walking and speaking exactly as the character should, then it's not going to come through the puppet.
Right. And kind of just a little sidebar on this, you mentioned acting. Do you have training in acting? Like, did you go to school for acting?
Yes, that was, well, that was always my first love. That's what I thought I was going to do. Meaning I thought Broadway was my focus.
Right.
That was going to be the thing, was Broadway musicals. And so I was training myself fully. I have a BFA in acting from the Goodman School of Drama, which is now the theater school. And that was my focus all through grade school and high school. And again, about that following your heart. The thing is, you can train yourself, get yourself trained for what you love, but also be completely open to the doors that are going to present themselves and go through those. Even if you don't know the actual outcome, so letting go of the Broadway thing brought me to all this other amazing stuff that is still what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And we went back to Broadway anyway with Puppet Up, so it worked out.
There you go. Full circle.
Yeah.
Came all the way around. Now, you're a builder too, right? Don't you build some puppets?
I build out of necessity. I wasn't necessarily trained, but I did latch on to any teaching that I could get from Jane Gutnick, and because my hands are so small in relation to all the other puppeteers, the guys are going to build their puppets and they're going to be for guy hands, gigantic guy hands. So when I go in there, I can't manipulate with the subtlety and the work that I want to do. So I had to learn. Okay, what foam can I move around? What can I stuff up? Is there anything I can stitch down to make smaller? Sneak in there and do what I need to do so the puppets work for me. But yeah, I think that helps, as well as knowing the camera, knowing all that stuff, knowing how to tweak your puppets to make them work better is always good.
Yeah, good skill to have.
Yeah. I mean, I did build some stuff out of pieces for the original Puppet Up, which was really exciting. I love doing that, yeah.
Well, speaking of Puppet Up, Puppet Up is an improv show, and the Muppets are kind of known for their improvisation as well. Do you prefer scripted or improv in work?
There's an awesome place for both. I love doing scripted because I'm bringing somebody else's art and story to life, which is exciting, and then being able to collaborate with them, and then improving and riffing off of that is bonus, of course. And I adore pure improv. There's nothing like that. Getting in the zone and having this stuff, complete worlds coming out of nowhere, and creating them on the spot. There's no other high like that. Especially including music improv, which is just stellar.
Yeah, which you're very good at.
Oh my gosh, thanks. I love it. I love any kind of performing. So yeah, both is good.
Well, on the let me ask this: on the Muppet series that you worked on, the recent Muppet series,
yes,
was there elements of improv on that like made it through to the final episode? You know what I mean? Like, was there moments of improv that were like, oh, we're gonna keep that? That's really good.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
A lot, all the time. Yeah, because that's the funniest stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, you're respecting what the writers have created, which is awesome. They know the characters, and to toss in, it's just gold.
Well, and even puppetry improv, like the writers can write something on the page, but you as a puppeteer can go, oh, but if I turn the puppet just this way when he's he or she says this, then I know that it'll be even funnier.
Yes, totally. Yeah. Movement improv, prop improv, totally. Yeah.
Right, and using the frame and everything. Yeah.
Yes.
Now you mentioned twice now about following your heart and
I'm a huge
going where the you prefer to go. What do you do? Because we do work in an industry where there's not work all the time. We would love to. I think I said before in this podcast, we would love to work every day, but we necessarily can't work every day.
Yeah.
What do you do when there is no work?
I have expanded and fanned out my work possibilities as far as I could. That's why I'm also doing the voiceover. I'm doing the on camera. That's all union work too. Yeah. As well as the puppet stuff. Writing, drawing, whatever I can that's creative.
Do you have your own projects that you work on? Not necessarily puppet, but just like, I'm writing a novel, or I'm,
Oh yeah, all the time.
Yeah.
Anything that's creative. But I mean, even waking up and, throwing breakfast together is creative, To have an entire...
Not the way I do it, I'm sorry.
I creatively moved toward Trader Joe's.
Right.
It's all art.
Yeah.
If you let it be, if you want it to be.
Yeah.
But yeah, I make sure there's always something going on. It's not possible to live in this world right now with just a focus on doing only one thing. You have to hyphenate like crazy.
Yeah. Have 10 million jobs to make a living.
Yeah. But if it's all things you love, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm really the thing about following your heart. I mean, I had so many people say you can't do that, or don't do that, or what a hard life, or career counselors at school. You don't want to do that.
Right.
You want to go into accounting. No, I really don't.
Yeah. I would bash my head against the wall if
Yeah.
I go into accounting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nothing against accountants.
You guys are great.
Yeah.
Thank God that you love what you do, and I can love what I do. Yeah.
Because we need you.
Yeah. And we meet together, and taxes are good.
Yeah.
But, no, I mean, Karen, there was some kind of ridiculous test or something, these tests in school to see what career you were supposed to be, and I was like a tree growing rabbi or something. They were just ridiculous.
Well, and there was never like entertainment on there, like
No.
that was never a possibility.
No.
On those, because like he would look at all the results and like, oh, what are all the things, and there was never actor or
no
maybe like, oh, radio engineer, but even that is not, another great job, but not what. Well, I guess it could be creative. But what I'm saying, I'm not insulting. Now we're getting accountants and radio engineers mad at us.
And tree-growing rabbis. Yeah,
right, exactly.
No, we love you all.
Yes.
That's not what...
But there was never actor or puppeteer or voiceover artist.
No, the arts are always, especially in this culture, very frivolous, very considered unnecessary, which is ridiculous because when you turn on your TV,
yeah,
all these people are the creative
watch?
People that you... shunned in high school. Yeah.
Well, talking about working on a set, what are some things or something that you always bring with you to set to kind of make your day easier?
I have a gigantic rolly bag, which everybody always makes fun of, but let me say that 3/4 of that are my giant puppeteer boots because I have to be as tall as all the guys. But I always have a full black outfit. I have custom fit black gloves in case the ones on set don't fit me because my hands are so small. Black cap, good knee pads. You never know when you're going to be crawling around on the floor. I have safety pins. I have black gaffer tape. Really good stuff that I love. I have a Leatherman tool. I have a mini flashlight. I'm pretty much, ultra backpacking. I've got my whole kit ready to go.
You go right from the set to the woods.
Yes.
No, but that is great. I think that's, you're bringing everything that you might possibly need.
Yeah.
And so...
You have to be ready. You can't really rely on, going for the bag of what might be there from somebody else.
Right.
Be ready to go, ready to do your work. Be self-sufficient and professional.
Yeah, especially if it's like one of those jobs where, like you mentioned earlier, where they haven't worked with puppets. And then you get the job and you're the only puppeteer on set, and you go to set and they're like, oh, here's the puppet, and then you're this needs to be fixed, I need to tape the rods, I need to so that's a great kit to have.
And a small sewing kit too.
You should here's my idea, you should sell those, make the kits, and people could go to your website and buy because I would buy one of those kits. That's a great kit to have.
That's awesome.
What so far out of your career has been your most memorable puppet moment on set?
Right now, it is the entire series that we just did, the
Muppets.
The Muppets TV series. Because as a female puppeteer, the opportunities are not as prevalent as with the men. Just in terms of being part of the core group of the Muppets. So even though I've been with the guys for 27 years, I think the most heartbreaking thing is knowing that because of how I was born, I'm not going to get those opportunities, which is mind-bending, but that's the way it is. And to have been given the gift of being the female puppeteer that's on the same level with having a character in the series like that, is not only something I've been working and waiting for, but I know that it was an absolute gift. And so I treasure every single second of what was given to me and that opportunity. And thank you, everybody. yeah, that was a miracle and a dream come true, and I will never forget. They didn't have to do that, and I appreciate it completely. And it was amazing to work with the guys.
Well, I know I'm not the only one saying I hope we see a lot more of those characters in the future in whatever avenue that is.
Oh, Yolanda.
Either another series or web stuff or whatever, because they were great. You did an awesome job.
Thanks.
It's really good.
Well, I love Yolanda. I mean, when I know almost all the girls have had a crack at her. I performed her first in 1993, I think, on Muppets. What was that? Muppet Classic Fairy Tales?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we did a Emperor's Clothing. What is that? Emperor's New Clothes.
Emperor's New Clothes.
Yes. And got to do the rats with Jerry and Steve.
That's pretty amazing.
That was, yeah. I had a moment there where I was like thinking back about how freaking amazing that was. Yeah.
What part of your puppetry are you most critical about?
I'm critical about the fact that I have not had the time to study other forms. Because I know that there's like this secret underlying kind of competition with like, hey, there's the TV puppeteers and hey, there's the stage puppeteers, and we're really all part of one really, really, really beautiful art form. And that's what I regret, is not studying enough of the other forms and having that under my belt and exploring those facets. I think that would inform and enhance the work that I'm doing. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's what I would like to work on.
Well, finally, I would love to wrap up by asking you, who is your favorite puppet character that is not your own?
Puppet that Gonzo. Gonzo, I will always have a soft spot in my heart for Gonzo. When I was in high school before. Wait. No, super young. I saw the Muppet movie, and I was just an introvert, nerdy girl drawing and writing and totally bullied and all of that. And I watched the Muppet movie, and seeing Gonzo singing that song at the campfire, I was like, oh my God. Yeah, he just grabbed my heart, because he was this unusual, nerdy little creature who just had this optimism. He just wouldn't stop. And no matter what was happening to him, he still loved the world, and he still kept going, and that helped me immensely. And I'll never forget that.
Yeah. And how amazing is it now that you get to work with Dave?
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
And that when I saw that movie, I went home and wrote a letter to Gonzo, and I never sent it, and I saved it. And just last year, we had this award ceremony honoring Dave, and I read that letter to him. Yeah. I'm like crying I'm crying right now. Nobody can see him.
Well, Julianne, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. I will put a link to your IMDb page where people can see all your credits in the show notes for this episode.
Awesome.
It's been great talking to you.
Oh, thanks. This has been awesome.
Incredibly huge thanks to Julianne Buescher for being my guest on this episode. You can find links to Julianne's IMDb page in the entry for this episode number 3, over at underthepuppet.com. Now it's time for this episode's next step in your Puppeteer action plan. Do you know how to build a puppet? I'm sure you've noticed that a common thread in these interviews has been that while being a puppet builder is not necessary to be a puppeteer, having a basic understanding of how puppets are constructed and how to slightly modify puppets so they're easier for you to perform is a good idea. So your next step this time around is to start looking into how puppets are constructed. There are many great resources on the internet on how to build puppets, and I will link to a few of them in the post for this episode. Again, that's episode number 3 over at underthepuppet.com. Also, check out your local public library for books on puppet building. You can also check with your local Puppetry Guild or the Puppeteers of America to see if there are puppet builders you can connect with for help. You don't have to ever wind up building one, but knowing how puppets are built will help you become a better puppeteer. Well, that's going to do it for this episode. I welcome your feedback via email at hello@SaturdayMorningMedia.com or via Twitter, where the show is at username Under the Puppet. I want to hear your suggestions for questions I should be asking and for future guests. Also, remember, the goal of this show is to talk to puppeteers making it happen in all sorts of styles of puppetry. So if you know an amazing bunraku or shadow puppet artist, reach out. Let me know who I should be talking to. Thanks for listening. Talk to you next time on Under the Puppet. Under the Puppet is a production of Saturday Morning Media and is made possible by the Saturday Morning Media Patreon patrons who've gone to patreon.com/Saturday Morning Media and set up a monthly donation for as little as $1 a month. Huge thanks to Shay Stewart, Merle Lafferty, Jeff Peterson, Dale Gadania, Stephen Staver, Jackie Klimo, Melissa Crawford, Dave Slusher of the Evil Genius Chronicles, Mike Coughlin, Dorothy Pachoco, John D., Kathy Crawford, Brian Greer, Carrie Whitney, Chuck Tomasi from the Technorama podcast, Chris Foster, Stephen Ing, Clinton of ComedyForecast.com, Vicky DeVries, Mike Wobschall, Twitter user Butzingear, a.k.a. Wildcat, Eve Cunning, Mike Hamilton, Gaston Moreno, Reed Loveland, Ivan Asquith, Vanessa Whitney, Nancy McCarthy, Janine Lee, Peggy Etra, Kristen Hogan of Squid Friends, and David Akers. If you'd like to support this show and the other fun content from Saturday Morning Media, become a patron. Head on over to patreon.com/Saturday Morning Media and set up your monthly donation today. You can also tell a friend about the show or leave the show a review on iTunes. And while you're over there in iTunes, be sure to click that subscribe button. That way you'll get new episodes the moment they are released. Under the Puppet is copyright 2017 Saturday Morning Media, Grant Bachoco, executive producer, all rights reserved. www.SaturdayMorningMedia.com. You've been listening to Saturday Morning Media. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.